Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're welcome once again to another session of our Arabic class. Learn and speak Arabic like the natives in 6-month program. In this lesson 3, module 2, we'll be learning about command tense verb. In the previous lesson, we've learned about the parts of speech which we've mentioned to be 3: noun, verb, and harf. See video lesson 2 for details about noun and present tense and past tense verbs. In this lesson, we're looking at command tense verb, and this is termed as فعل أمر, or you say فعل الأمر, فعل الأمر, فعل الأمر. That is command tense verb. Command tense verb, they are verbs, or command tense verbs basically are verbs that are formed from their corresponding imperfect tense, that is فعل المضارع. The command tense verb is a product of the mudari. Once we have a mudari verb, we can form the command tense by adjusting few things, which we shall be looking at in this lesson. First of all, let's look at the morphological transition of this verb قرأ. قرأ is a past tense verb, فعل الماضي. So we have talked about فعل الماضي in the last lesson. For details, please see the lesson 2. We have the verb ماضي, فعل الماضي قرأ, which is he read. قرأ. Now he read transform from the ماضي to مضارع by being يقرأ. We've also talked about the present tense verb, this فعل مضارع, or the imperfect tense verb, how we form them. So we have قرأ as the ماضي verb, and we have يقرأ as the مضارع verb. يقرأ. Now from this مضارع verb, we take our command tense. So we just say اقرأ. I want to believe that many of us will be familiar with the surah Qalam. اقرأ. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. اقرأ. How did we come about the command tense verb اقرأ? What happens here? There are two things that we need to take cognizance of. We need to be aware of in this particular verb اقرأ. The last letter, hamza, carries a sukun. اقرأ. Alright. And the initial, the letter before the first letter, is an hamza also. But we call this type of hamza hamzatul wasl. Hamzatu al-wasl. Hamza of connection. So, and that is why we say اقرأ. Those are the two things you would find in a command tense verb. So this gives us the signs to identify a command tense verb. Sign to identify a command tense verb. Signs of a command tense verb. Signs of a command tense verb. Now, these signs are just two like I've mentioned. The first is the last letter of this verb, being a singular verb, mufrad, we are talking about a singular verb here, which is a primary anyways. You have to have a single before you have, a dual, or you have a plural. So the singular form of verb is the primary verb in question. So the last letter of every primary verb, every singular verb, will carry a sukun, and there will be an initial, which is hamzatul wasl. This hamzatul wasl is a replacement for the huruf al-mudhara'ah. Those are the prefixes that denotes a verb as a present tense verb. We've talked about them. There are 4 and 8. So we say yaqra, or if we are talking to a second person, we say taqra. And so we want to command a second person. We replace the ta of the mudhara' by hamzatul wasl, and we say iqra. So these are the 2 signs you notice or observe in a singular verb. Alright, so let's look at what is an hamzatul wasl. Alright, hamzatul wasl, like the name implies, is an hamza of connection, written in Arabic as hamzatul wasl. Hamzatul wasl. In wasl, connection. Hamza of connection. If this is understood. Now, hamzatul wasl can be read with a kasra or be read with a dhamma. So we say iqra. And sometimes for another verb, we say uktub. For a verb write. Taktub, he writes, and we can say uktub. So how do we know when to read as U and when to read as E? Now, this is very important. Take a close attention to this and listen carefully. Get your pen and paper to write down this lesson carefully. Now, there's a principle, just a few principles. If you have learned tajweed, you probably must have learned this principle of hamzatul wasl as to whether to read with E or U. Okay, how do we know when to read with a kasra, E? You look at the 3rd letter from the hamza. The 3rd letter from the hamza. If it is carrying a fatha or a kasra, then you read the hamza with a kasra. Now, what am I talking about? Look at this verb. Okay, so we have the verb idhab. Idhab. Okay, so what is the 3rd letter from the hamza? Hamza is a first letter, is a letter. 1, hamza is a letter. 2, dhal is another letter. And this ha is another letter. So this ha, which is the 3rd letter from the hamza, is carrying a fatha. So in that case, the hamzatul wasl is considered as a letter. So it is the 3rd letter counting from hamzatul wasl. 1, 2, 3. Is that clear? So the hamzatul wasl is in this case going to be read with a kasra. Why? Because the 3rd letter ha from that hamza is carrying a fatha. Idhab. Now, if it is carrying a kasra, also the same thing will happen. The same ruling will be set. So we'll say, for example, ijlis. Ijlis. So why ijlis? Because the 3rd letter, which is lam here, okay, is carrying a kasra. Ijlis. Okay, so in that case, we say the hamzatul wasl will have a kasra. And that's what the rule is all about. Now let's look at the second principle. The second principle says, if the 3rd letter from the hamza is carrying a dhamma, then you read the hamza with a dhamma. Now let's look at what that means in this verb. uktub. Uktub. The ta here is carrying a dam, so we say u. Uktub. This is clear and simple and straightforward. Uktub. So that's all about the ruling of Hamza. Hamzatul Wasl. If that is taken, now, therefore, we'll have, for example, yadhhab becomes idhhab. Yajlis, tajlis, for example, becomes ijlis. Uktub, taktub becomes uktub. For a feminine, if you are talking to a second person feminine, you'd have to add a ya. And therefore you say ijlisi. Ijlisi. So you had a ya in this case. Ijlisi. So for the feminine, for uktub, is a uktubi. Uktubi. Is that taken? Very well. If that's clear, let's move on. So this is all about the principle of Hamzatul Wasl, and of course to create a distinction between a masculine and a feminine command tense verb. Is that taken? Now, this will take us to another part of the lesson, which is the future tense verb. Future tense. Future tense verb, we understand that is a verb talking about the future. We've also mentioned that the future tense verb is not different from its imperfect form verb. We in fact mentioned also that the same present tense verb or imperfect tense, which is fi'l al-mudari, can of course mean the same or three meanings. It could be translated as, for example, if I say aktub, I write, or aktub, I'm writing, or aktub, I will write. So this fi'l al-mudari can mean these three meanings, which includes the future. However, we can create a distinction. We can create and of course prevent, in case where we fear ambiguity, we can prevent ambiguity of meaning. Also to avoid any form of confusion. What do we do to create a perfect future tense? In this case, with respect to what letters we had, or with respect to creating the distinction, we had two letters. These two letters that we be adding to the fi'l mudari to create a sense of feature with no ambiguity. And these two letters that we said to be added will divide the verb into two types of future. We'll have the near future and we'll have the far future. Now let's look at the near future. What do we mean by the near future? For a verb to denote a future that is not very long, close one, probably right after you talk, or few minutes after you talk, or in fact few hours after you talk, that could be considered as a near future. So what do? We just add sin fatha sa to it as a prefix to the fi'l mudari to create a sense of near future with no ambiguity. Now let's take for example, if I say I will go, سأذهب, and that makes it in near future. I'll go, probably a few minutes after I talked. Of course, I can also say سأسكن. I'll live. سأسكن. سأسكن هنا. I'll live here. سأسكن هنا. And هنا means here. سأسكن هنا. I'll live here. سأسكن هنا. I'll live here. So, it's showing my willingness to do that. And of course, yes, I'm ready to do it. Probably immediately after I talked. Now we can also say he'll say. He'll say. سيقول. He'll say. So, in this case, this is a creation of a near future, verb. If this is understood. In fact, before we move on to the far future, in fact, in English, you can say, I travel tomorrow. I travel tomorrow, and it's going to give you the sense of future, which is in corroboration to the fi'l mudari, which could mean three things. If you say, أسافر, أسافر means I travel. It could be talking about something that you do, a habitual action. If you say أسافر, it could also mean I will travel. That's for future. And if you say أسافر, it could also mean I'm traveling. Present continuous action. This is also applicable in English, and it's acceptable. If you are an English learner, you'll agree with me. Okay, so we had sa for something very close. سأسكن هنا. سيقول سأذهب. Now let's move on to the far future. Far future verb. We're talking about something not very close, something later or very, very much later. So what do you have here? You had سوف. You had the verb سوف. Okay, سوف. Now the سوف is used most often in the Quran. You'll find places where سوف is used. I'm going to give us a Quranic example where this word is used. كلا سوف تعلمون ثم كلا سوف تعلمون. Nay, you shall know. Not now. Later, very much later. Probably in the day of Qiyamah. So سوف is used in this sense. So, in the Quran also, for the usage of sa, Allah says in Surah Baqarah, سيقول السفهاء. سيقول. Allah uses the word سيقول to show how near the kuffar will say certain thing. The foolish ones in Mecca, the kuffar basically, when they would say about the Prophet, why did you change your qibla? So سيقول is our take. Now, this is the difference between the two type of future verb. Verb. So we have near future and of course the far future. Another example that we could think of is سوف. كلا سوف تعلم. And obviously have سوف أشرب عصيرا غدا. سوف أشرب عصيرا غدا. I'll drink a juice tomorrow. Okay, so سوف. Now let's look at the grammar tip here. Take note, when object of a verb is singular, it takes fatha at the end. When we have a verb and we have an object upon which the verb is acting, the verb is going to be mansub. That is, if it's a singular, it carries fatha, as we can see on عصيرا. سوف أشرب عصيرا غدا. I can also say أريد أن أشرب الماء. The ma is the object, so it takes fatha. This is very important to take note of. Can you try saying some sentences to include the word sa and the word سوف? If you can do that, please drop your answer in the comment section before I give you the classwork or the assignment to do. Now let's move on to the third of the parts of speech. Remember, we said we have three parts of speech. We have al-ism, al-fa'il, and al-harf. In these fundamental principles of Arabic, the fundamentals of Arabic language, we have successfully divided now al-ism, al-kalma into three parts of speech. Al-kalam. And we are going to be looking at the third part here. Alright, now let's look at what al-harf is, particle. Basically, the particles, why are the harf? They do not really have a complete meaning on themselves. Okay? So, كلمة تدل على معنى في غيره. It's just a meaning. It's a word that denotes meaning in relation to another thing. It doesn't have its own meaning. At least not complete meaning. Now let's take a look at some of them. For example, when we say fi, which means in. What in? When you say in, what meaning does he give you? It doesn't make a complete sense. You have to use it with another. So, in, fi, to, ila, with, ma, in, or with, or by could mean be. Be. The harf be can mean any of these three meanings with respect to the context you are talking from. Min, that's from. Ala, on. Briefly, we have just looked at few of the common harf that there are. And let's look at the grammar tip for the harf. All particles, basically particles are preposition in nature. So, it will give all your singular now a kasra. It will make it majroor. Again, we're talking about singular because singular is the primary thing. So, we have to talk about that. So, when you have a particle entering upon a singular noun, it gives that noun a kasra. Now, let's look at some examples here which may be relevant to you. So, we have number one, أسكن في البريطانية. في البريطانية. أسكن في البريطانية. I live in Britain. في البريطانية. So it gives the بريطانية a كسرة. I go to work. أذهب إلى العمل. I go to work. أذهب إلى العمل. Now let's have a hint here. You can say العمل, which means work, or الشغل, which also means the same thing. الشغل أو العمل, work. For that reason, if you use الشغل, you can say أنا مشغول. I'm busy. I'm in the middle of work. I'm busy. So we say أنا مشغول. Let's look at the third example on the al-harf. So we have اذهب إلى المدرسة. اذهب إلى المدرسة. There's a command verb اذهب. إلى is a harf here, which is to. اذهب إلى المدرسة. I'm traveling to Sudan next week. We can say that سوف أسافر إلى السودان في الأسبوع القادم. Next week. في الأسبوع القادم. I will travel to Sudan next week. سوف. We use the word سوف because we're talking about next week. Now let's take a look at the word safar, which is travel, to travel. Basically, safar, it means he traveled. But in dictionaries, you find it translated in infinitive form, and it says to travel. Safar, he traveled. Now you can form it in its imperfect form. You say yusafir. He travels, he's traveling. You can say tusafir, nusafir, usafir. Usafir, I'm traveling. Nusafir, we're traveling. Tusafir, you're traveling. How do you say for female? Can someone guess how to say for female? If you can guess, please put it down in the comment section. How do you say for female? For male, we say tusafir. But for female, what do we had? What are the extra letters that we had? Okay, I'm not gonna reveal that in this lesson. But if you have an idea, please drop it in the comment section. Now let's look at some vocabularies in this examples that we have. Vocabularies al-mufradat. So week is usbur. Qadim means coming, arriving. However, by context, you can say al-usbu' al-qadim or usbu'un qadimun, that is a week coming, which is next week anyways. However, there's another word for next, exactly, which is a tali. And a tali is someone who's next to you or something that is next in your list or in your agenda. So next week, therefore, by context, not by transliteration, not by original translation, not by literal definition. Al-usbu' al-qadim. By literal definition, it means coming week. And of course, yes, if we say coming week, we are right to say next week as well. Okay, that's what we have. Now, number 5 example, we have I'm coming from school and qadimun min al-madrasa. I give this example in order for us to see the usage of the word qadim. And of course, we have the preposition harf also used here. Ana qadimun min al-madrasati. I am coming from school. Okay, something we need to take note here. We need to take note of very quickly. Al-harf, just like I said earlier, is a particle of preposition, and it will give all singular nouns a kasra. It will make them majroor. It will make them what? Majroor. This is very important. Now we've come to the end of this lesson. I want you to lay your hands on this assignment. Translate the following words. He sits, sit. He writes, write. He drinks, drink. He laughs, laugh. These are command. The present tense, the imperfect form, to command form. He plays, play. That's for assignment number 1. Please write it down in your notebook. It's very important, and also do it right in the comment section. Assignment 2. We have translate the following as well. You translate, we are sitting on a chair. I'm drinking tea. She laughs. She will laugh tomorrow. You will travel by plane. That's number 5. Number 4, we will play football next week. Please translate these exercises, these statements. Write them in your note first, and of course send it to the comment section for marking. Thank you for following and listening to the lesson till the end. See you in the next video. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Please subscribe, like, turn on notification, and share. Thank you.